Imagine trying to break into the most heavily guarded fortress in the galaxy. That's what any would-be invader faces in the Warhammer 40,000 universe when they dare approach the Sol system. Our solar system, 38,000 years from now. It may be the cradle of humanity, but it's no gentle nursery. It's a fortified war zone, a holy realm, and a crowded museum of ancient history all at once. In the grim darkness of the far future, the solar system is unrecognizable, transformed into the beating heart of the Imperium of man. And it shows. Approach from the void beyond Pluto and your troubles begin early. Long before you even glimpse the distant glow of the sun, you'll blunder into the system's outer kill zone. An unseen maze of void mines drifting in fields thousands of miles wide, and automated weapon platforms lurking in the darkness. Massive star forts stud the distant edges of the system like lone sentinels in the night. Each of these floating bastions bristles with macro cannons and torpedo bays, garrisoned by entire regiments of the Astra Militarum. They anchor the outer defense, ensuring any incoming vessel announces itself politely or gets blown to scrap. Slip past those, if you can, and the defenses only tighten. Patrol flotillas from Battlefleet Solar prowl the outer reaches, their enormous warships scanning for any sign of trouble. Ancient hunter-servitor drones, mindless cybernetic predators the size of fighters, glide through the void on search and destroy routines, seeking out intruders. By the time you reach the orbit of Neptune, dozens of eyes, both human and machine, are watching your every move, and none of them are friendly. As you press inward, naval squadrons multiply, hailing you with challenge codes and ready to unleash hell if you so much as blink wrong. Closer to Terra, the blackness of space is saturated with orbital defense platforms, dockyard fortresses, fighter bases, and monitoring stations. The nearer you get to humanity's home, the more the darkness bristles with man-made teeth and claws. Why such extreme security? Because at the center of this cosmic hedgerow of guns lies holy Terra, Earth, the throne world of the Imperium and the sacred seat of the Emperor of mankind. Every soul, from the lowliest voidsman on those star forts to the golden-armored Adeptus Custodes on the palace walls, is dedicated to one goal: keeping the Sol system safe from any threat. They've learned the hard way that even the heart of humanity isn't beyond the reach of war. After all, this system has been besieged by the War Master Horus himself. It has weathered internecine strife, alien incursions, and the wild storms of the warp. The defenders are determined that it will never happen again. So yes, the solar system of Warhammer 40K is no peaceful tour of planets. It's a layered fortress of unparalleled scale. But beyond the guns and soldiers, what does this famous star system actually contain? What do those 8 planets and myriad moons, asteroids, and oddities look like in the 41st millennium? Let's take a journey from the sun outward, visiting each major world in turn, from the scorched little rock of Mercury all the way to distant Pluto and the icy frontier beyond. Along the way, we'll see how even the most familiar planets have become something far more bizarre and dangerous in 10,000 years of war. Buckle up, in your void-proof command throne, naturally. This is going to be quite the tour. Mercury, the scorched foundry. Our first stop, hugging the sun so closely you'd swear it's on fire, because it practically is Mercury. In the 41st millennium, Mercury is officially classified as a mining world. Now, calling Mercury a world at all feels generous. It's a tiny, airless ball of rock that's either boiling or freezing solid, depending on which side faces the sun. Daytime on Mercury can melt lead. Nighttime flash freezes whatever's left. Not exactly a vacation spot. Yet, somehow, the Imperium looked at this barren, radiation-baked wasteland and said, "Yes, let's set up mining operations here." Of course they did. No environment is too hostile if it has resources to exploit. There are no bustling cities on Mercury's surface. It's far too hostile for an open population. Instead, the action happens in orbital facilities and shielded mining outposts burrow deep below ground. Shoal stations, they call them, clusters of mining platforms that flit in Mercury's orbital path or hide on the relatively cooler dark side of the planet, harvesting rare metals from Mercury's crust. Automated drills bore into the rock during the brief mercy of dawn or dusk, and legions of heat-shielded servitors toil away, oblivious to the lethal temperatures. Any human workers crazy enough to be stationed here live in hermetically sealed habitats drilled into the bedrock, or in void stations high above the scorching surface. Life on Mercury consists of short, brutally efficient shifts. You mine what you can as fast as you can, then get the hell out before Sol's fury cooks you alive. Believe it or not, this tiny hell planet has some deep history. In the dark age of technology, long before the Imperium, Mercury housed a city called Cytheron. How did people live on Mercury back then? By being ridiculously high-tech. Cytheron's inhabitants built advanced force field generators that literally held back the sun's rays, creating bubbles of twilight in which life and industry could survive. Those technologies were so impressive that 10,000 years later, during the Great Crusade, the Dark Angel's Space Marine Legion adopted one of Cytheron's inventions for their own use. They created the Cytheron Pattern Aegis, a portable force field device so strong it could shrug off weapons that would turn lesser warriors to ash. The elite Dark Angel's Terminators carried these relic shields into battle during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. Not many places can claim we gave the Space Marines a new toy, but Mercury can. However, Mercury's tale isn't all about clever tech and quiet mining. During the Horus Heresy, the galaxy-wide civil war of the 31st millennium, even Mercury became a theater of intrigue. As Horus's forces massed to assault Terra, the traitorous Alpha Legion found uses for every dark corner of the Sol system, and Mercury was no exception. The Alpha Legion, masters of sabotage and stealth, infiltrated Mercury's vicinity by making common cause with scavenger clans that lurked among the mining outposts. Picture ragtag tech barbarians eking out survival on the fringes of the innermost planet, suddenly receiving secret orders and supplies from Alpharius himself. They schemed to disrupt Imperial communications and supply lines from the inside. Mercury's unforgiving environment made it a perfect hideout. Who's going to check the far side of a planet that might melt your face off? These infiltrators sowed havoc until they were discovered and eliminated as the siege of Terra drew near. In fact, shortly before Horus reached Earth, the Emperor's own agents, the Sisters of Silence, descended upon Mercury and conducted a purge. A nest of rogue psychers had taken refuge among the scavenger clans, perhaps encouraging rebellion or signaling to the enemy. The Silent Sisters, elite null maidens who cancel out psychic powers, gave no quarter. They stormed the warrens beneath Mercury's crust, dragging out every witch and warp dabbler and burning them alive. It was said the purge turned Mercury's night side into a flickering aurora of witch fire as hundreds of psychers were silenced. Grim work, but necessary, at least by Imperium standards. The message was clear. Not even Mercury's airless caves would be allowed to harbor threats to the throne world. All this drama on a tiny sun-blasted world that most Imperial citizens will never lay eyes on. In the end, Mercury in Warhammer 40K is a lifeless hellscape pressed into service as a utilitarian outpost. There's virtually no atmosphere, no water, and certainly no life beyond what humans have brought. What you will find are mine shafts burrowing like wormholes through the bedrock, shield domes shimmering over small refinery outposts and orbital platforms glinting against the brutal daylight. It's a testament to the Imperium's resolve, or sheer stubbornness. Even the innermost circle of hell in our solar system has the Aquila stamped on it and is put to work. Mercury may sit closest to Sol's holy light, but it survives only by the grace of mankind's technology and tireless effort, a little rock with a big role in feeding the forge worlds of the Imperium. Venus, the toxic paradise. Moving outward from Mercury, we come to Venus, a world that in ancient times was synonymous with beauty, but in Warhammer 40K is anything but gentle. Venus has always been a vision of hell: dense toxic clouds, crushing atmospheric pressure, acid rain, and volcanism everywhere. In our 21st century time, it's a lethal greenhouse. By the era of the Imperium, things have improved. Marginally. Humanity actually terraformed Venus at some point in the lost ages before the Imperium. Don't imagine oceans and forests, though. This is no second Earth. Venus remained a choking furnace, but humans managed to carve out habitable niches using technology and sheer will. In the 41st millennium, Venus is classified as an industrial world. There are deep cloud hives, cities built on platforms or peaks that rise above the worst of the acidic cloud layer. Enormous, shielded habdomes hold millions of workers in relative safety, while outside rage hurricane winds and sulfuric clouds hot enough to melt metal. The planet's surface is still a nightmare of volcanoes and acid-choked valleys, so most activity happens in the upper atmosphere or highlands. Life for a Venusian hive citizen means living inside sealed arcologies where every breath is recycled and every vista is an endless yellow cloud bank out the plastile window. During Old Night, the Age of Strife, Venus was dominated by tech witches and warlords. The most notorious were the so-called War Witches of Venus, psyker tyrants who ruled the volcano enclaves and fielded armies of eerie constructs called lithogolems, stone automata animated by forbidden science. When the Emperor's Great Crusade reached Venus, it fell to the Iron Warriors Space Marine Legion to bring the planet to compliance. They did so in typically uncompromising fashion during the Mer Yasht campaign. Led by the Iron Warriors Primarch Perturabo, under the Emperor's direct orders, they cracked the continent-spanning fortresses of the War Witches one by one. The War Witches unleashed literal living statues and other bizarre weapons, but the Iron Warriors are nothing if not determined. They reduced the Witches' strongholds to rubble with relentless bombardment and disciplined assaults. In the end, the War Witches were annihilated to the last, and Venus was freed from their maddening rule. In the Imperium that followed, Venus became something quite ironic. Both a roaring furnace of industry and, in orbit, a place of refined leisure. Massive factory complexes were established on the surface, where it was geologically stable, to mine rare elements from Venus's ever-active crust. These factories are mostly automated or staffed by tech priests and servo-automata. Conditions are too lethal for unprotected human labor. Meanwhile, orbiting high above Venus are a number of luxury resort stations. Yes, despite, or because of, Venus's harshness, the Imperium's wealthy built orbiting pleasure platforms where they could admire the planet's golden clouds from a safe distance. In the calmer decades before constant war engulfed the galaxy, the High Lords and other elites would take vacations on these Venusian resort orbitals. They boasted lavish gardens, grand opera houses, null-gravity spas, every indulgence you can imagine, all in the midst of space. Only the Jovian aristocracy's retreats could rival them for decadence. Of course, as the Imperium became an ever more besieged society, such getaways became rarer. Many of those pleasure stations were abandoned or repurposed for military use. Still, a few might linger. Dusty pleasure domes now serving as inquisitorial safe houses or naval officer rest stations. All told, Venus in Warhammer 40K is a world of contrasts. On one hand, it's extremely hostile, still requiring the most advanced technology to inhabit. On the other, it's a productive member of the Imperium. Its refineries and chemical plants churn out munitions, promethium, and various rare industrial goods that feed the war effort. And despite the planet's deadly nature, humans do live and work there in great numbers, proving the adage that humanity can thrive, even in the most unlivable places, with enough terraforming and a healthy disregard for personal safety. If you were to descend through Venus's clouds, you'd pass from silent, blistering toxicity into the humming, cacophonous interior of a hive city. Smog-choked corridors, cogitator terminals clattering, and the distant thrum of machinery endlessly pumping the planet's lifeblood into space tankers. It's not pretty or comfortable, but it's vital. The so-called morning star of old Terra has become a smoking crucible where the Imperium's burdens are burned away, leaving only raw, unyielding materials for war. Terra, Earth, the throne world. And now we arrive at the crown jewel of the Sol system, Holy Terra, formerly known as Earth. This is the birthplace of humanity, the seat of the Emperor's golden throne, and the administrative core of an empire spanning 1,000,000 worlds. One might expect such a place to be a paradise. Think again. Terra in the 41st millennium is a nightmare megacity covering the entire globe, an ecumenopolis of uncountable billions. It is the most sacred world in the Imperium and also arguably the most miserable for its inhabitants. Picture Earth as it is now, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. Now strip away the oceans, pave over the continents, and replace the clouds with a permanent haze of smog and the glow of billions of lights. That's Terra in Warhammer 40K. The planet's surface is covered in layer upon layer of city, Gothic hive spires that reach the stratosphere, miles-wide administratum data factories, sprawling cathedrals that have subsumed entire mountain ranges. Entire ancient landmarks are either gone or entombed within newer structures. The Himalayas, for instance, are now just the foundations of the gargantuan Imperial Palace complex. The once blue sky is obscured by pollution and the constant traffic of aircraft and voidcraft. If a citizen of the 21st century could see Terra of M41, they'd likely fall to their knees, in awe or horror or both. Terra is officially classified as a hive world, indeed the hive world to end all hive worlds, and a shrine world, and uniquely as the throne world of the Imperium. The population is impossible to truly count. Estimates range from 500 billion to 1 trillion human souls, give or take a few billion. These masses do not live in comfort. The vast majority of Terrans endure lives of unrelenting drudgery. They are packed shoulder to shoulder in endless hab blocks, toiling in thankless bureaucratic or industrial jobs from cradle to grave. Pollution chokes what little air remains, and most citizens will never see a true clear sky or sunset. Squalor, overcrowding, and ceaseless toil are simply the way of life. Yet they press on with a fervent faith in the Emperor that gives them purpose amid the bleakness. For all its horrors, Terra is revered beyond measure. Every year, countless pilgrims arrive from across the galaxy, those who can obtain passage, just to set foot on humanity's home soil and see its holy sights. Many die en route or end up stranded penniless in void stations around the planet, but still they come. They gather in immense holding shrines on Luna or aboard pilgrim ships, waiting for their chance to descend to the surface in tightly controlled batches. To walk upon Terra is to complete the ultimate pilgrimage, even if that walk is through smog-choked streets and over piles of centuries-old rubble. The entire planet is a temple of the Imperial cult. There are grand cathedrals the size of provinces, memorials and statues lining every major avenue, and countless lesser shrines tucked in the shadows of gigantic hab towers. Above all stands the Imperial Palace itself, a complex so vast it could be considered its own city, indeed, its own empire. Centered on the Asian landmass, the palace spans thousands of square miles, a walled realm of fortresses, gardens. Yes, a few still exist inside its walls, and the magnificent Eternity Gate that leads to the Emperor's sanctum. This is where the High Lords of Terra convene to rule, where the Astronomican's light is focused, and where the Emperor's broken body sits upon the golden throne in the Sanctum Imperialis. The palace is protected by layers of void shields and legions of the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's golden-armored guardians, alongside the devout regiments of the Imperial Fists chapter and the elite troops of the Adeptus Arbites and Solar Defense Forces. The walls themselves are plated in adamantium and inscribed with billions of names of those who've died for the Emperor. It is equal parts citadel and sacred monument. Terra's orbit is just as busy and fortified. The space around Earth is crowded with defenses and stations. The most famous of these is the Phalanx, the massive star fortress that serves as the mobile fortress monastery of the Imperial Fists chapter. Though capable of warp travel, the Phalanx often anchors in Terra's orbit, adding its firepower to the planet's protection. In addition, innumerable defense platforms and shipyards ring Terra like a metallic halo. One can hardly travel a few hundred kilometers in orbit without seeing the glint of another battle station or the running lights of a patrolling warship. Every day, a swarm of vessels arrives and departs, merchant freighters delivering tithes from across the galaxy, Navy cruisers coming in for repairs or resupply, pilgrim ships bearing the faithful, and black ships of the Inquisition laden with psychers to feed the Golden Throne. The amount of traffic is so immense that Terra's void controllers are arguably the most stressed people in the Imperium. A single miscalculation could cause a chain reaction collision of ships like a collapsing star system. Needless to say, security in orbit is fanatical. Every incoming ship is challenged and verified multiple times. Any anomaly, a stray course change, a signal out of place, is likely to be answered with lethal force first and questions later. Terra didn't survive this long by being lenient. Despite all these defenses and horrors, or perhaps because of them, Terra inspires unbreakable loyalty in its people. Even the downtrodden hive worker knows they live on the most important rock in the universe. Holy Terra, Capitoline of mankind. It's both a proud boast and a prayer on their lips. They endure their suffering with a sense of duty. To live and die in the shadow of the Emperor's light is an honor no matter the pain. And if an invader ever breaches Terra's skies, as one did once, its people will fight with whatever they have. Hab gangs arming themselves with scrap, monks picking up las guns from fallen soldiers, entire hive blocks forming makeshift militias. They remember the stories, how Horus, the arch-traitor, set foot on Terra and wrought unimaginable destruction, how Sanguinius, the angelic Primarch, gave his life defending the Eternity Gate, how the Emperor himself battled Horus in orbit above and was grievously wounded bringing the traitor down. Every Terran lives with that history written in the very stones of their world. The scars of the Horus heresy still mark Terra's landscape, from the blasted, now rebuilt districts of the palace to the rubble of old spaceports and defensive works. These sites are treated as holy ground, preserved as much as rebuilt, so that no one forgets the cost of treachery. In the millennia since, Terra has seen further trials. the War of the Beast in M32, when an Orc warlord nearly broke through, the Age of Apostasy in M36, when internal tyranny led to blood on Terra's streets, the recent 13th Black Crusade, and the war against chaos that actually saw demons breach the palace outskirts once more. But each time, Terra has endured. In the aftermath of the galaxy-shaking events of the Great Rift, Primarch Roboute Guilliman, newly returned, walked upon Terra's soil. He reorganized defenses, reforged the High Lord's Council, and launched the Indomitus Crusade right from Terra's spaceports, making sure the next time chaos came knocking, Terra would not fight with its back against the wall. Terra today is, in a word, majestic, in the old, terrifying sense of the word. It's awe-inspiring and dreadful at once. For a pilgrim arriving from an agri-world or hive world out in the eastern fringe, the first sight of Terra, usually from a transfer barge off Luna, might bring them to tears. The entire orb glows faintly gold from the billions of lights and the pollution halo. The constant stream of ships makes it look as if Terra has metal rings like Saturn. Once they land, that pilgrim will step out onto the great ferrocrete causeways of, say, the Lion's Gate spaceport, rebuilt since the heresy, thrumming with activity, and they will be but a tiny speck among a sea of humanity, all marching toward one goal, the glory of the Emperor at the center of it all. Every pitted surface, every bell toll, every distant contrail in the sky reinforces that this is the throne world, the axis mundi of human destiny. Holy Terra, at once a desolate wasteland stripped of natural life and the most revered, zealously protected place in the galaxy. Luna, the throne's first shield. No tour of the Sol system would be complete without visiting Terra's constant companion, Luna, our moon. Of course, in the 41st millennium, it's no mere gray rock in the sky. It's a vital and heavily populated asset of the throne world's defenses. In many ways, Luna is Terra's first and last line of defense, a shield orbiting the throne. It's also a place with a remarkable history of its own, marked by both scientific marvels and dark secrets. Long before the Imperium, Luna was a center of human science and genetic engineering. During the Dark Age of technology, massive laboratories were built beneath the lunar surface. By the time the Emperor unified Terra, Luna was inhabited by a coalition of tech clans and gene cults known as the Selenar. These were brilliant but fanatical bio-magi who had unlocked advanced genetic manipulation, and they did not intend to kneel to anyone, even the Emperor of mankind. When diplomatic overtures failed, they reportedly sent the Emperor's envoy back in the form of a living horror of transmuted flesh as a message. The Emperor resolved to take Luna by force. Thus, the very first battle of the Great Crusade was the pacification of Luna. The Emperor unleashed the freshly forged Legiones Astartes on the moon. The majority of the fighting fell to the 16th Legion, later named the Luna Wolves in honor of this victory. They would eventually become the Sons of Horus. Under the personal command of Horus, the Space Marines stormed Luna's gene cult strongholds. The Selenar gene cults unleashed terrifying weapons, cloned war beasts, virus bombardments, perhaps even malevolent artificial intelligences. But they could not stop the Emperor's fury. After a short but intense campaign, Luna was conquered. In the aftermath, the Emperor claimed the Selenar's vast gene laboratories for his own use. It was here, beneath Luna's surface, that the Emperor would soon master the techniques to create the first Space Marine legions on a mass scale. With Luna secured, the Emperor effectively obtained the biological and technological keys to build his armies for the Great Crusade. As the Crusade advanced across the galaxy, Luna evolved into a support base and a strategic asset rather than a battleground. The moon became a staging area for the Imperial army and navy. The Sisters of Silence, the aforementioned order of psychic null maidens, established their primary training grounds on Luna, in a fortress known as the Somnus Citadel. Vast shipyards were constructed in orbit. Port Luna, said to be the largest man-made structure of its time, a ring of docks encircling the moon. Millions of Terran citizens moved to Luna to work these shipyards and manufactoria, often never setting foot on Terra itself. By the height of the Great Crusade, Luna was essentially a heavily armed factory moon, churning out war material and continuing its role as a recruitment and R&D center, albeit under Imperial control now, with the sullen remnants of the Selenar cult watching their secrets fuel the Imperium they had resisted. Luna's surface and interior were heavily modified. Ancient terraforming engines at its core increased Luna's gravity to near-Earth norm, both to make life easier and to ensure consistency for those training there. Some atmosphere was introduced into giant sealed caverns and domed craters, though the surface at large remained airless and unforgiving. The moon bristled with defenses. An array of anti-ship laser batteries and defense silos were built ringing the equator in orbit, forming what was called the Ring of Iron, literally a band of linked defense stations. Luna essentially became a giant orbital battle station grouped with Terra itself as the key heart of the Terran defense sphere. During the Horus Heresy's Solar War, Luna was a prime target for the traitors. Horus knew that if he could take out Luna's defenses, Terra would be far more vulnerable. He dispatched a massive assault force led by the Sons of Horus First Company and elements of several other legions, notably the Iron Warriors and Word Bearers, to attack the moon. What followed was a brutal and tragic confrontation. The traitors bombarded and then invaded Luna. The Port Luna orbital ring, once the largest shipyard in human history, was savaged by suicide attacks. One rogue World Eater's warship rammed itself into the ring, shattering segments of it. Traitor asserts led by First Captain Abaddon landed and fought through Loyalist defenders, Blood Angels and Imperial Fists detachments, alongside Sisters of Silence garrisons. It was chaos on the gray, powdery plains and in the dark tunnels below. The Selenar cultists, many still harboring resentment towards the Imperium, actually rose up on the side of Horus, offering aid and genecraft knowledge to the invaders. For a short time, the traitors overwhelmed Luna. Abaddon even captured some of the old gene labs deep below and attempted to twist them to Horus's purposes, some say trying to grow new warp-mutated warriors. But the valiant defense of the Loyalists and the timely withdrawal of key assets denied Horus complete victory. As Horus's main fleet closed on Terra, he left a token force to hold Luna. After Horus's defeat, the Scouring saw Loyalists return in force to recapture the moon. They found devastation. Luna's once glorious orbital ring was shattered, its shipyards ruined. The Somnus Citadel was a smoking ruin where Sisters of Silence and traitors had butchered each other. Entire cities in the Lunar Maria, flat regions, had been nuked to denial or pulverized by boarding torpedoes. The moon had paid in blood for every hour Terra gained to prepare. In the 10,000 years since, Luna has been rebuilt and remains utterly crucial, though it carries scars from the heresy that never fully healed. The orbital ring was partially reconstructed, but it's now more a broken arc than a full ring. Sections of it still drift as derelict ghost stations in Selenar orbit. The Sisters of Silence eventually re-established their presence on Luna after millennia of absence. Robute Guillemon, upon his return, had the Somnus Citadel restored and manned by the refounded Silent Sisterhood to strengthen the throne's defenses. The Adeptus Custodes also station shield companies on Luna now, patrolling its surface and space to ensure nothing like Horus's near conquest happens again. Massive naval bases operate on Luna. For example, Port Luna was rebuilt, though not to the titanic glory of old, and serves as a primary base for Battlefleet Solar, capable of servicing thousands of warships in orbit. Enormous macro-cannon batteries and defense lasers dot the surface, integrated into the still-functional segments of the Ring of Iron. In essence, Luna is armed to the teeth, watching over Terra with unblinking vigilance. To the average citizen of the Imperium, Luna is almost as holy as Terra itself. It's the site where the Emperor's dream of the Space Marines was first realized, and the site of the first victory of the Great Crusade. Pilgrims often include Luna on their route to Terra, though setting foot on it is tightly controlled. Many just gaze at it from Terra's surface, a bright golden crescent or full moon, its reflected light tinged by Terra's atmospheric pollutants, giving it an eerie halo. Little do they know the extent of the cities and bunkers covering that moon, or the dark secrets entombed under its crust. For under the gray dust lie vaults from the Dark Age, some containing mysteries even the Mechanicus fear to probe. Luna is essentially one gigantic military base and shrine. If Terra is the heart, Luna is the shield raised before it, battered but unbroken. Mars, forge of the Imperium. From Terra, we voyage next to the fourth planet, Mars, a world as different from lush Earth as one can imagine, yet utterly entwined with Terra's fate. Mars is the domain of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests of the Imperium, and it is nothing less than the manufacturing heart of human civilization. Often called Sacred Mars, or the Red Planet, it's effectively a second capital of the Imperium. Though Mars's sovereignty is a unique arrangement, it's not so much ruled by Terra as it is an allied realm joined at the hip. Mars' history is long and legendary. It was the first planet humans ever terraformed, way back in the 22nd millennium. They made it habitable, gave it seas and a blue sky, and colonized it heavily. Mars became a center of industry and scientific achievement, even developing into humanity's first true interplanetary hive world. During the Dark Age of technology, Mars and Earth coexisted as twin keystones of human civilization. But the Age of Strife shattered that balance. Warp storms cut off Mars from Terra, and Terra fell into barbarism while Mars devolved into technocratic isolation. Mars' carefully maintained climate failed. The atmosphere thinned. Radiation from the sun scorched the surface, and Mars became a desert once more. The survivors retreated into sealed forges and subterranean vaults, clinging to life via their machines. It was during this time that necessity, and perhaps insanity, gave birth to the cult Mechanicus on Mars, a religion that worshipped technology itself, elevating every circuit and cog to divine status. By the time the Emperor unified Terra and looked toward Mars, the Red Planet was ruled by these tech priests, who referred to the Emperor in prophecy as the Omnisciah, the Messiah of their machine god. Rather than fight a ruinous war, the Emperor formed an alliance with Mars. In a famous treaty, the Treaty of Olympus, signed in the shadow of Olympus Mons, Mars joined the Imperium as an allied but semi-autonomous power. The Martian Mechanicum would supply the Emperor's Great Crusade with weapons, ships, and technology. And in return, the Emperor guaranteed Mars religious freedoms and political rights within the Imperium. Thus, the ancient pact between Terra and Mars was struck. The twin centers of human power reunited. From that moment, the Imperium had two faces, the secular bureaucracy of Terra and the holy manufactoria of Mars, working in tandem, if not always smoothly. In the 41st millennium, Mars is the quintessential forge world. In fact, the Forge world, the first and greatest of them all. Its surface is a vast rust-red expanse of factory complexes, forge temples, and scrap yards stretching beyond the horizon. Once, Mars might have had a blue sky and open plains. Now it's all smog and metal. The atmosphere is toxic and often tinged red with iron oxide dust. Towering forge spires belch smoke and fear day and night. Not that day or night matter much beneath the perpetual haze. The population of Mars is around 20 billion, but unlike Terra, hardly any of those are ordinary citizens. Nearly everyone on Mars is part of the cult Mechanicus hierarchy. The majority are labor serfs and servitors, human bodies implanted with machines to carry out mindless, repetitive tasks. Above them are the Skitarii legions, the cybernetic soldiers of Mars, who police the forges and carry out the Mechanicus' wars across the stars. And ruling all are the tech priests themselves, individuals who have gradually replaced flesh with steel and nerve with wire, until many scarcely look human at all. The ruling council is headed by the Fabricator General of Mars, one of the High Lords of Terra by ancient right, and it coordinates not only Mars output, but the entire galaxy-wide Adeptus Mechanicus. Mars is often called the forge of the Imperium's war machine. Its factories produce a significant portion of all Imperial technology, from Alas guns and power armor to the God-engine titans that stride battlefields. Great orbital foundries, known collectively as the Ring of Iron, encircle Mars at its equator. These ring stations are shipyards so large that some of them dwarf entire cities. They are where many of the Imperial Navy's capital ships are constructed or refitted under the watchful gaze of Martian magi. Raw materials, much of it coming from Mercury, the Asteroid Belt, and beyond, flow into Mars' hungry forges via massive hauler barges. Every day, trillions of tons of cargo shuttle between Mars' surface and orbit, feeding the beast. It's said that when standing on Mars, the sky is never without dozens of small glowing dots, the exhaust of endless supply shuttles ascending and descending. Culturally, Mars is completely distinct from Terra, despite their political union. Martians speak in the binaric cant of the Mechanicus, a language of electronic blips and machine code, more often than High Gothic. They dress in crimson robes, the sacred color of Mars, representing both blood and rust, and decorate their augmented bodies with the iconography of the machine god. The skull and cog symbol flies everywhere. They revere ancient technological relics, treating maintenance as religious ritual. To see a tech priest of Mars in person is to behold a figure who might have a tangle of mechadendrites, robotic tentacle arms, where a torso once was, or a steel mask with glowing green lenses instead of a face, or who glides on an anti-grav platform because he long ago replaced his legs with a hovering disc. For the layperson, it's equal parts miraculous and terrifying. Mars's military might is formidable. It's the homeworld of several Titan legions, such as the renowned Legio Ignatum, fire wasps, and dozens of knight households, pilots of smaller one-man walker engines. During the Horus Heresy, Mars itself was a major battlefield, a civil war within the Civil War. The Martian Civil War, called the Schism of Mars, saw the Mechanicum split between loyalists and traitors, the Dark Mechanicum. Horrific weapons were unleashed as Fabricator General Kelbor Hal sided with Horus, turning half of Mars' guns against Terra. Ultimately, Mars fell to the traitors for most of the heresy, denying the loyalists its output when they needed it most. It was reconquered only after Horus's defeat during the scouring of the solar system. The damage done was immense. Entire districts of Mars were turned to radioactive glass, and some knowledge was lost forever. Even 10,000 years later, Martian tech priests still seek out scraps of lore or STC data lost in the fires of that civil war. By the present era, Mars has been rebuilt into perhaps the single greatest fortress forge in the galaxy. It bristles with defense lasers capable of bisecting a battle barge in orbit. Its orbital minefields and monitor ships keep constant watch for any threat, be it Xenos fleet or heretic armada. The Noctis Labyrinthus, a notorious complex of vaults on Mars, supposedly holds the Dragon, a mysterious, immensely powerful entity some believe to be a Catan shard captured by the Emperor in ancient times. True or not, the Adeptus Mechanicus guards the Labyrinthus with obsessive zeal. Not even Inquisitors easily gain entry there. Mars also houses the Astronomican's secondary arrays, since the primary Astronomican is on Terra, but Mars amplifies and maintains aspects of it, and immense data vaults containing standard template constructs, STC templates, and technical archives that underpin the Imperium's entire infrastructure. Traveling from Terra to Mars is perhaps the easiest leg of any journey in the Imperium. A regular shuttle service, a mere 1 astronomical unit away. Many high-ranking officials do it routinely. On approach, Mars appears as a ruddy orb, crisscrossed with faint banding, the visual signature of its many orbital platforms. At night, great patches of its surface glow with the light of forge fires, a bit like how our Earth seen from space at night shows city lights, but magnified 100-fold. Visitors to Mars, rare for outsiders usually restricted to sanctioned tech adepts or Imperial dignitaries, universally comment on the constant sound and vibration in the air. Mars is literally humming with energy and industry. The clanging of metal, the whir of distant engines, a background chorus of machine noise that never ceases. For a tech priest, that is the music of the Omnissiah. For a normal human, it's a potentially maddening din. Summed up, Mars is the indispensable powerhouse of the Imperium. It marries an almost religious reverence for knowledge, or at least for the forms of knowledge, with an unmatched capacity for production. It's a world of endless red deserts turned into endless factories. It's also a proud world, proud that, unlike most, it was not conquered by force, but entered the Imperium as an equal. In theory, if Terra fell, Mars could carry on the torch of the Imperium. Indeed, during the darkest hours of the heresy, many plans revolved around that possibility. Conversely, if Mars were lost, the Imperium's ability to wage war would swiftly grind to a halt. The symbiosis of Terra and Mars is the bedrock of human dominance. Thus, the Sol system's core has two hearts beating in unison, Terra's faith and leadership, and Mars's science and industry, albeit both twisted and evolved into the grim darkness of what they once were. The Asteroid Belt, humanity's quarry. The solar system's asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is far from empty. During the Imperium's early days, it was home to hardy mining colonies who carved out a living inside the larger rocks. Ceres, the largest dwarf planet there, served as a central mining hub and communications relay. Throughout history, the belt's resources have been continuously exploited to fuel Terra and Mars. Even during the Horus Heresy, asteroid bases helped relay messages and stage defenses until they were overrun. In the 41st millennium, the belt still hosts Mechanicus mining outposts and the occasional Void platform. It remains a sparse, rugged frontier, often used by smugglers or pirates as a hiding spot. Though Imperial Navy patrols make short work of any threats that linger. Humble as it is, the asteroid belt continues to provide raw materials and a buffer zone between the inner planets and the rest of the system. Jupiter, the great forge in the sky. Beyond the asteroid belt looms Jupiter, the giant of our system. In Warhammer 40K, Jupiter's sheer size is matched only by its sheer utility to the Imperium. No one lives on Jupiter itself, a churning gas giant with deadly radiation belts. But its orbit and moons have been transformed into one of the busiest industrial centers in Solar. Jupiter is essentially a vast orbital shipyard and forge world. It might sound odd to call a planet with no solid ground a world for industry, yet when people speak of Jupiter in the 41st millennium, they mean the swarms of stations, docks, and habitats that encircle the gas giant like an artificial ring. Historically, Jupiter's domain was not a gentle place. During the Age of Strife, Jupiter's many moons and orbital habitats fell prey to anarchy and alien infestations. Monstrous Xenos creatures had taken root on some moons. Degenerate human void clans scratched out a living in others. When the Emperor's Great Crusade reached Jupiter, a significant effort was needed to cleanse the system. The Void clans, being human, if rough around the edges, were assimilated and put to work for the Imperium. The Xenos, however, were exterminated in a series of brutal campaigns. The Jovian orbit was essentially swept clean of non-human influences, clearing the way for the Mechanicum to move in and capitalize on Jupiter's potential. And capitalize they did. Jupiter's upper atmosphere is rich in hydrogen, helium-3, and other gases useful for fusion fuel and industry. Massive orbital refineries were established to skim the gas giant's atmosphere for fuel. You can picture colossal craft dipping into the colorful cloud tops, scooping fuel and then returning to orbiting depots. More importantly, Jupiter became the site of the Imperium's primary navy shipyards. In orbit around Jupiter float titanic skeletal frameworks which can dock and construct warships up to battleship class. These, together with countless support workshops and foundries, are often collectively called the Jovian shipyards. It's said that during the Imperium's height, the Jovian shipyards alone produced a new warship every few days, a truly staggering output only possible with Mechanicus expertise and relentless labor. Now, one quirk of politics. Technically, Jupiter is part of the Imperium, as everything is, but the Adeptus Mechanicus consider its shipyards their domain. There was always a bit of tension whether Jupiter falls under Martian oversight or directly under the Imperial Navy's authority. In practice, it's a cooperative effort. Mechanicus Magi run the ship forges, while Imperial Navy officers coordinate on ship designs and schedules. The phrase "Jupiter orbits Mars, not Sol" is a sly comment among Navy personnel, meaning the tech priests hold the real sway out there. Either way, Jupiter's output is critical, and so both the Mechanicus and Terra's officials have a keen interest in keeping it running smoothly and safely guarded. Jupiter's immediate sky is filled with scrap and stations. There's even a name for the debris halo around Jupiter: the Call, a massive field of wreckage from ancient battles and scrapped ships that drifts in clumps around the planet. Over millennia, every time a starship was destroyed in Jovian orbit or an obsolete vessel was broken down for parts, not every piece was collected. The result is that Jupiter is circled by boneyards of twisted metal. The Mechanicus periodically sends out salvage teams to gather raw materials from the Call, but it's never-ending work and often low priority compared to building new ships. Jupiter's moons are each almost worlds unto themselves and have a variety of roles. Io, the closest big moon to Jupiter, a volcanic nightmare constantly flexed by Jupiter's gravity. It erupts sulfur and lava non-stop. Io has a few Mechanicus outposts built on comparatively stable plateaus or in orbit above, mainly to study geothermal energy and harvest rare isotopes thrown up by the eruptions. Essentially, no one lives on Io for long. It's a place where machines do most of the work in punishing heat, while tech priests monitor from orbit. Europa, once an ice-covered moon with a hidden ocean, in the far future, Europa was geo-engineered into a true ocean moon. The Mechanicum melted much of the ice crust, or built immense thermal regulators that maintain liquid water beneath, and seeded the subsurface ocean with modified algae and aquatic organisms. By the time of the Great Crusade, Europa had human underwater habitats, bubble-domed cities anchored to the ocean floor, or floating submarine colonies. The purpose was likely food production, all that algae and vat-grown fish feeding Jupiter's workforce, and possibly xenobiological research. Europa's oceans were unique and carefully maintained. During the Horus Heresy, some fighting likely occurred around Europa. One can imagine traitor saboteurs trying to poison the oceans or crack the ice. But overall, Europa survived and remains an important source of organic biomass and chemical nutrients for the system. It's one of the few places in Sol you could technically swim, if you had a taste for near-freezing, slightly toxic water and a bathing suit made of plasteel. Ganymede, the largest moon of Jupiter, indeed the largest moon in the solar system. Before the heresy, Ganymede was a crown jewel of the Jovian system. It was heavily colonized by the Mechanicum, a forge world in miniature. Its surface hosted massive manufactorum complexes supporting the orbital shipyards. Workers lived in hundreds of habitat domes on its surface or in orbit. But Ganymede's ambition led to catastrophe. The Mechanicum conducted experiments on Ganymede with forbidden or too advanced technology. In particular, they were testing warp-based power sources, some recovered from the lost tech of the squats, or other sources. These experiments went horribly wrong. They tore open reality on Ganymede, unleashing a warp contagion, a literal warp rift that turned the moon into a charnel house of demonic infestation. This event, remembered as the contagion of Ganymede, happened during the height of the Horus Heresy. Demons ran rampant, and Ganymede had to be abandoned, quarantined, and declared perdita, lost. For the rest of the heresy and long after, Ganymede remained a demon-haunted forbidden zone, one of the Sol system's own little hells left in the war's wake. Only in the Indomitus era, after the Great Rift, was Ganymede finally purged and reclaimed. The Grey Knights themselves, those secret Daemon Hunter space marines, led the assault to cleanse Ganymede, banishing the remaining demonic taint. Guilliman then ordered Ganymede repurposed as a fortress and logistics hub called Aquila Adamant to support the ongoing Indomitus crusade. Today, Ganymede is back in Imperial hands, heavily fortified and dedicated, ironically, to ensuring the Imperium can fight the kind of evils that once consumed it. Thule, not one of the classical Galilean moons, but an artificial satellite, an asteroid moved into Jupiter orbit in antiquity. Thule was converted into a secret Mechanicum shipyard in the latter days of the Dark Age of technology. During the heresy, the Dark Mechanicum used Thule to construct several colossal warships in secret, notably the Furious Abyss, a super battleship for the Word-Bearers Legion. Once these secret ships were completed, the traitors obliterated Thule to cover their tracks. The entire asteroid base was blown apart by the new warship's guns. Thule was reduced to rubble, some of which doubtless contributes to the coal debris field. It's a footnote in history, but a poignant one. Even in victory, the Imperium sometimes only finds a smoking crater where an entire forge once was, leaving mysteries that may never be solved. Kadal. Another Jovian moonlet turned fortress, Kadal was the primary munitions depot for Jupiter's defenses. Think of a rocky moon turned into one giant arsenal. Warhead silos, stockpiles of macro shells, bunker vaults packed with plasma torpedoes. During the Horus Heresy, Kadal met a grim fate. Alpha Legion saboteurs infiltrated it and blew it up from within, or perhaps subverted its guardian tech priests into firing on friendly targets. Accounts vary. The explosion and chain reaction gutted Kadal, eliminating it as a resource for the Loyalists at a critical time. Debris from Kadal's destruction likely rained down into Jupiter or joined the junk orbiting it. If one were to comb through the call, you might still find fragments stamped with Kadal's serial numbers, broken missiles and half-melted shells drifting in silence. Saros Station. Jupiter, for all its industry, still had room for luxury, at least before the heresy. Saros Station was a magnificent resort in orbit over Jupiter's Great Red Spot, a place where Jovian nobility and Mechanicus magi could take lavish vacations in zero gravity, with a dramatic view of Jupiter's eternal storm below. It was described as so opulent that only the Venusian orbitals could match it. Golden halls, zero-G gardens, the finest foods and entertainments outside Terra itself. Of course, when war came to Jupiter, Saros Station's fate was sealed. As traitors seized the Jovian system, Saros Station was either destroyed in the crossfire or intentionally scuttled to keep it from enemy hands. One apocryphal account claims the station's governor rigged it to self-destruct rather than let the Night Lords use it as a base of operations. The Night Lords would have enjoyed turning a pleasure palace into a torture den. True or not, nothing of Saros's former glory remains today. If you were to fly through Jupiter's orbit, maybe you'd pass a particularly ornately carved chunk of debris, a fragment of a golden balustrade or a crystal window, the last remnants of the Jovian elite's folly amidst a war zone. Throughout the Horus heresy, Jupiter's system was fiercely contested. The Iron Warriors, experts in siegecraft under Perturabo, took grim pleasure in dismantling Jupiter's defenses piece by piece. By the end, several moons were devastated or, like Ganymede, completely lost. After the heresy, the Jovian yards were painstakingly rebuilt because the Imperium desperately needed their shipbuilding capacity. Over the next millennia, Jupiter became once again the primary naval shipyard of Segmentum Solar. To this day, the Adeptus Mechanicus of Jupiter, often called the Jovian shipwrights, are among the most skilled void engineers in the Imperium. They maintain many ship classes that have ceased production elsewhere. Rumors even persist that deep in the Jovian dock archives lie STC fragments for lost ship designs that the Mechanicus prays to rediscover the understanding to use. Defense-wise, Jupiter is now a bastion second only to Terra and Mars. The system's perimeter is guarded by picket fleets that patrol constantly. Any approach vector toward Jupiter is likely to cross path with a system monitor or a wing of Falchion escorts demanding identification. Minefields and automated turrets lie in wait among Jupiter's outer moons. The moons themselves bristle with defense lasers and void shield generators. Particularly, the refortified Ganymede hub fortress coordinates much of the outer defense, and the Grey Knights maintain a presence there to oversee its arsenal. So you have the paradoxical image of secretive Grey Knights hanging around a bustling navy yard. But if anything demonic shows up, they're right on hand. Life in Jupiter orbit, for those tens of millions who live there, mostly Mechanicus personnel, shipyard workers, and their families, is regimented and strenuous. They live in space habitats and moon colonies, where the schedule is dominated by construction shifts and prayer shifts. In the Mechanicus, maintenance rituals and work are often one and the same. They often have never been to Terra or even Mars. They're born in one pressurized hab cylinder, die in another, having contributed a few rivets to the hull of a grand cruiser or assembled plasma conduits for a dozen frigates. A common saying among Jovian workers is, "We build the sword the Emperor wields." They take pride in it. It's not an easy life. Accidents in the yards, exposure to radiation or depressurization incidents claim many. But it's a duty they're indoctrinated to hold sacred. In summary, Jupiter in Warhammer 40K is the Imperium's great orbital shipyard and a vital stronghold. It's an entire sub-empire of industry afloat around a titanic gas giant. It shows how the Imperium doesn't let something like uninhabitable gas giant stop it from turning a region into a productive center of humanity. The saying, Jupiter only makes warships, is essentially true. The whole system is geared toward building, maintaining, and crewing the fleets that keep the Emperor's peace. And if war ever comes to Sol again, Jupiter stands as a gigantic steel bulwark, a beacon of the Imperium's industrial might, ready to bash any invader with 1,000 freshly forged warships and a rain of nuclear fire from its moons. Saturn, the Inquisition's redoubt. Before the Imperium, Saturn's moons formed a pocket empire called the Saturnine Ordo. Human societies with their own void armies, their troops were even called void hoplites, and perhaps some alien influence. The Emperor pacified them early in the Great Crusade, incorporating Saturn's people into the Imperium. Many became the first recruits of the Imperial Army's Solar Auxilia regiments. Later, during the Horus Heresy, Saturn's system was largely evacuated and declared off-limits by Malkador the Sigillite. He used the remote rings and moons as a secret staging ground to establish the Grey Knights and other clandestine projects. From that point on, any unauthorized vessel nearing Saturn was destroyed without hesitation, and the once populous Saturnine colonies faded into myth. In the aftermath of the heresy, Saturn never returned to being a normal civilian world. It became something else, a forbidden zone turned fortress for the nascent Inquisition. Saturn, with its majestic rings and dozens of moons, offered plenty of secluded locations for secret bases. The Inquisition and its allies, like the newly founded Grey Knights chapter of Space Marines, gradually converted the Saturn system into their private stronghold. Today, Saturn is essentially an inquisitorial fortress world, though the world, in this case, is spread across its moons and orbital stations. Saturn itself is a beautiful gas giant with enormous rings of ice and rock. But you won't find tourist cruises or peaceful research stations admiring them in the 41st millennium. Instead, hidden among those rings and on those moons are some of the most secret and well-guarded installations in the Imperium. Any ship straying too close to Saturn without the highest clearance simply disappears, vaporized by defenses they likely never even saw. Let's go over Saturn's notable moons and what they host now. Titan, Saturn's largest moon and arguably the most important world in the Sol system after Terra and Mars. Titan is wholly controlled by the Grey Knights, the secret chapter of Space Marines dedicated to hunting and destroying chaos demons. During the heresy, Malkador hid Titan in the warp, along with all the Grey Knights' founding members and war material, to protect and accelerate their creation. When Titan returned to real space a few centuries later, it reappeared in Saturn orbit, and a fully formed chapter of Grey Knights emerged from it, ready to serve. Titan today is effectively a Grey Knight's homeworld and monastery. Its entire surface is fortified. The Grey Knight's fortress monastery is a dark, imposing citadel carved of black basalt and adamantium, riddled with secret chambers and arcane libraria. The moon's environment is inhospitable, frigid, and with a thick haze. But that hardly matters. The Grey Knights prefer solitude and harsh conditions. Orbiting Titan is Deimos, which was originally a moon of Mars that Malkador also snatched away and later relocated here. Deimos now serves as the Grey Knights' personal forge world, churning out their unique war gear, psychically attuned ammunition, nemesis force weapons, silvered power armor, and even their spacefaring strike cruisers. Between Titan and Deimos, the Grey Knights possess an autonomous bastion. They answer to no one but the Emperor and the Inquisition's Ordo Malleus. Naturally, Titan's existence was top secret for most of history. Even now, if you were an average Imperial citizen, you'd have no idea what Titan is, beyond perhaps a dim myth of the Emperor's angels hiding on Saturn's moon. And that's exactly how the Grey Knights like it. Mimas, a small moon with a very distinctive giant crater, giving it a Death Star look. Fittingly, that crater now houses an inquisitorial prison complex. Mimas is the Sol system's most infamous prison world. Deep within that yawning crater, the Inquisition imprisons the most dangerous beings imaginable. Heretics whose minds or secrets are too valuable to simply execute. Rogue psychers whose powers need to be contained and studied. Xenos entities captured alive for research. Even turncoat space marines or fallen inquisitors who await judgment. The prison is said to be a honeycomb of individual vault-like cells, each reinforced with psychic wards and automated defenses. The guards are not mere men with stubbers. They include blank-souled Sisters of Silence wardens, squads of stormtroopers, and lobotomized combat servitors hardwired into the walls. No one has ever escaped from Mimas. At least, officially. There are always rumors and wild tales, but if any are true, the Inquisition has erased them from history. Being sent to the dungeons of Mimas is essentially a death sentence, only prolonged. A place where the Imperium puts things, or people it wants to forget, but can't afford to destroy outright. Enceladus. Once upon a time, Enceladus was the capital of the old Saturnine Ordo, the site where the rulers of Saturn supposedly signed their treaty with the Emperor. In the 41st millennium, Enceladus serves as the seat of the Ordo Malleus, the branch of the Inquisition that deals with demons and chaos. The moon hosts a sprawling fortress palace often just called the Enceladus Fortress. It's part citadel, part courthouse, part library. Here, high-ranking inquisitors convene to share intel on demonic threats, store profane artifacts under heavy guard, and train acolytes in the knowledge and hatred of chaos. The libraries beneath Enceladus are rumored to hold tomes bound in human skin, books of ritual and exorcism that would turn an unaugmented man's hair white from reading a single line. Naturally, access is extremely restricted. Enceladus also contains more comfortable quarters. Many Inquisitor lords maintain private manses here, within the fortress compound, where they can enjoy some luxury while plotting mankind's salvation or doom. Despite being demon fighters, some Inquisitors do enjoy a fine amasec after a long day of demonology briefings. Enceladus is off-limits to all but Inquisition personnel and their most trusted retinues. Approaching its orbit without clearance is a surefire way to cease existing in seconds. Tethys. A minor moon turned into a very peculiar kind of training ground. Tethys is an icy, almost airless body, but beneath its surface, the Inquisition intentionally trapped a number of demonic entities. Why? As part of the Grey Knight's trials. Aspiring Grey Knight paladins, the elite of the elite, are said to be sent to Tethys alone, without their power armor or usual war gear, and must survive for a set period, often a night, on its surface while being hunted or tempted by the bound demons beneath. If they can last until retrieval with their sanity intact and without calling for help, they pass the test. If not, well, Tethys claims another soul. The entire moon is essentially considered tainted ground, a kind of proscribed area. It's patrolled only by purifier teams and monitored remotely via auspex. Should anything ever escape Tethys's subterranean vaults, fail-safe devices, perhaps cyclonic charges, are in place to destroy the entire moon. It's a grim example of the lengths the Imperium goes to forge heroes from horrors. Iapetus, the outermost major moon of Saturn, Iapetus is now a massive naval station and gateway. It was once home to the last holdouts of the Saturnine Ordo. Some rebel elements apparently fought to the bitter end here during the Great Crusade, and later the Death Guard virus bombed them into submission during the Heresy. After the Heresy, Iapetus was rebuilt as a bastion serving both the Inquisition and the Imperial Navy. Today, a vast naval fortress and dockyard complex covers much of Iapetus. On one side of the moon, you'll find dry docks with inquisitorial black ships and Grey Knights strike cruisers undergoing maintenance. On the other side, a colossal array of defense silos and lance batteries forming effectively a checkpoint for anyone moving in or out of Saturn space. Iapetus is the only stable route for sanctioned traffic to enter Saturn's inner defenses. Everything else is mined or patrolled to oblivion. Thus, any incoming or outgoing vessel, and very few are allowed beyond Saturn without special sanction, must stop at Iapetus for clearance, like a locked door to the realm of Saturn. The personnel on Iapetus are a mix of Imperial Navy armsmen and inquisitorial agents, and the whole place falls under inquisitorial command. It's one of the few places those two institutions work side by side daily. They keep things professional. After all, if you've been assigned to Saturn duty, you're already an elite trusted not to blab secrets. Beyond these, Saturn's rings themselves hide other treasures and terrors. There are rumors of a secret research station disguised as an ice chunk in the rings where Mechanicus genitors study Tyrannid DNA, or an old Xenos outpost from the Dark Age locked in an orbit of Saturn waiting quietly to be discovered. But such tales are unconfirmed, and intentionally so. The Inquisition likes to keep everyone, even other Imperial agencies, guessing about exactly what's hidden in Saturn's shadow. What does Saturn look like to the observer now? Perhaps surprisingly, from a distance, it looks as serene and majestic as ever. Pale yellow orb, broad shimmering rings. No obvious artificial lights like on Mars or Terra. The installations on Saturn are meant to be unseen. You might only realize you're being watched when it's too late. A pilgrim ship venturing unwittingly close might suddenly find several sleek, black inquisitorial craft flanking it, demanding it turn around under pain of death. Or an enterprising rogue trader who thinks to sneak a peek at Saturn's secrets might send a stealth drone into the rings, only to have it vanish, and moments later an angry inquisitor shows up at their door with uncomfortable questions. Saturn is off limits, and the Imperium enforces that with deadly seriousness. In the grand scheme, Saturn's system is the Imperium's secret weapon and insurance policy. It's a repository of forbidden lore, a training ground for its most specialized warriors, and a depot for reserves that can be unleashed in extremis. It stands somewhat apart from the everyday bustle of the rest of Sol, cloaked in silence and misinformation. Yet, when the Sol system is truly threatened, from Saturn will come the reinforcements and revelations that could tip the balance, as they did when the Grey Knights emerged in the final hours of the Horus Heresy, or when the Inquisition's hidden fleets struck back against surprise chaos incursions during the Noctis Aeterna. To any potential invader or traitor, the lesson is, you ignore Saturn at your peril. While your eyes are fixed on Terra's golden beacon or Mars' red glow, it's the pale jewel with silent rings that might just hide the blade poised at your back. Uranus, the Lost Gate. Proceeding outward, we arrive at Uranus, a giant of pale blue-green hues tipped on its side like a rolling ball. At first glance, one might think not much happening here. Uranus has no solid surface, and its moons are mostly small and airless. But in Warhammer 40K, Uranus holds a strategic secret, a backdoor into the Sol system known as the Elysian Gate. This was a stable warp route, a rarity, built during the Dark Age of technology, allowing ships to translate to and from the warp right at Uranus, bypassing the usual safe jump distance beyond Pluto. In other words, it's a permanent warp shortcut into humanity's home system, and that makes it priceless and dangerous. During the Age of Strife, Uranus was home to a peaceful community of orbital city stations. These artisans and scavengers called themselves the Azurite, known for their beautiful crafts and sculptures made from scrap and ice, and for maintaining the Elysian Gate. They lived in ring-shaped habitats and clusters around Uranus and its 27 meager moons, making a living through scavenging and art. When the Great Crusade reunited Sol, the Azurites welcomed the Emperor's protection and joined the Imperium without bloodshed. However, not long after, calamity struck. A fleet of void pirates, some whisper they were Chaos Reavers testing the waters, assaulted Uranus. The Azurites, unaccustomed to war, pleaded for aid. The Imperium sent a modest relief force, a company of Imperial Fists Space Marines, who engaged and quickly routed the pirates. But as the last pirate vessel was destroyed, the enemy sprang a horrific trap. They had seeded Uranus's orbital cities with a plague known as the Screaming, a warp-borne contagion delivered via insane psyker slaves in boarding torpedoes. This plague transmitted through sound. Anyone who heard the psychic screams either mutated into a monster or died shrieking in agony. In minutes, Uranus's peaceful habitats turned into charnel houses of twisted flesh and wailing horrors. Realizing the threat, the Imperial Fists commander on site took drastic action. His Space Marines intentionally deafened themselves, a legendary act of self-sacrifice. They ruptured their own eardrums with combat knives or bolter fire, so they could fight without succumbing to the auditory plague. These 50 Astartes then boarded the largest infected station. In total silence, immune to the mind-rending screams, they battled through mobs of plague-spawned mutants. Reaching the reactor core, they set it to overload and signaled a final evacuation. With most civilians already dead or mutated, they chose to detonate the station and wipe out the plague in one stroke. The station, and the Space Marines still on it, exploded in a flare visible from Neptune, eradicating the infection at the cost of all those brave fists. In honor of this valor, the Emperor himself ordered the Bell of Lost Souls tolled on Terra, its first ringing in history, to commemorate those 50 Astartes who saved the Sol system from a creeping doom. Uranus was left devastated, the Azurite civilization virtually extinguished overnight. All that remained were empty, contaminated stations and a strategic warp gate with no guardians. Fast forward to the Horus Heresy. Rogel Dorn fortified Uranus heavily as part of his outer defense sphere, the Second Sphere. He positioned void mines, defense lasers on moons, and a fleet of monitor ships around the Elysian Gate. Sure enough, when Horus made his move, he used that gate to storm into the system. Thousands of traitor ships poured out at Uranus in a surprise assault. The Uranus defenses fought valiantly. Outnumbered and cut off, the Imperial Fists and their allies there sniped from hidden emplacements and detonated trap minefields to slow the enemy. They held out for a day and a half of furious void war, but in the end, they were overwhelmed. The survivors retreated in-system to fight another day, and the traitors surged on towards Saturn and Jupiter. Only after Horus's defeat did the Imperium reclaim Uranus, finding it strewn with wreckage from that colossal battle. In the Scouring period, new colonists were eventually brought to repopulate Uranus's stations, the Azurites sadly just a memory. The Elysian Gate was, of course, secured, ringed with defense platforms and heavily monitored by the Adeptus Mechanicus. They gave the defense grid an ominous nickname, the Eyes of the Old God. To the local Voidborn, The ring of crackling orbital weapons around the gate looked like a giant, unblinking eye. Ever since, Uranus has remained a militarized waypoint. In the 41st millennium, Uranus itself has no inhabitants. It's just an ice giant, but its orbit hosts a few Imperial outposts. A mining rig here, a sensor station there on a moon like Oberon or Umbriel. The moons, largely barren, are used for small-scale resource extraction, water ice, hydrocarbons, and as anchor points for sensor arrays watching the Elysian Gate. There are still people living around Uranus, perhaps a few thousand across various installations, but nothing like a thriving population. Culturally, they carry on a touch of Azurite legacy. They have a habit of painting murals inside their stations, bright turquoise and blue patterns to remind them of home. But mostly they're Navy and Mechanicus personnel on multi-year assignments, yearning to be rotated back closer to the sun. If you were to approach Uranus without permission, the first thing you'd notice is likely a curt, warning ping on your ship's auger. A robotic voice reciting a litany that you are entering a restricted military zone. Turn back immediately. Push further, and you might catch a glimpse of distant flecks, defense platforms, arming and aligning firing solutions. Maybe you'd see the faint outline of one of those Eyes of the Old God platforms against the teal backdrop of Uranus. You'd be wise to stop there. The Imperium lost too much at Uranus once. They aren't about to be caught napping again. Neptune, the distant sentinel. At last we reach Neptune, 8th planet from the Sun, an icy gas giant on the frontier of the Sol system. Neptune in Warhammer 40K is a forlorn outpost, the last stop before interstellar space. It has an air of melancholy isolation about it, yet it too has felt the touch of war and harbors its own secrets. Humanity colonized the Neptune system in some fashion during the Age of Terra, around M15 to M18. Back then, adventurous settlers established mining bases on Neptune's moons, and perhaps orbital stations in search of exotic isotopes, or simply to prove humanity could tame even the outer dark. But cut off by warp storms, those colonists diverged over many generations. By the time the Emperor's crusade reached them, Neptune's moon-dwellers had become mutants in Imperial parlance, physically warped by low gravity, isolation, and perhaps a touch of cosmic radiation. Some might have been merely awkward abhumans, others truly degenerate. In any case, compliance wasn't peaceful. The Emperor sent the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels under Primarch Sanguinius, to bring Neptune to heel. The Blood Angels fought a grim and costly campaign in the lightless tunnels of Neptune's largest moons. The mutants of Neptune, the worst of whom had become feral, pale things skittering in the dark, did not surrender easily. They knew no one else was coming to save them. The Blood Angels, true to their temperament, prosecuted the war with both fury and a peculiar mercy. After losing thousands of Astartes in brutal tunnel fights, casualties the Blood Angels could ill afford, Sanguinius opted not to exterminate all the foe. Instead, once victory was certain, he offered the surviving Neptune dwellers a chance at redemption. Their strongest youths would be taken and inducted into the depleted Blood Angels Legion. It was a controversial move. Some of his brothers would have just virus-bombed the sites and been done. But it paid off. The Blood Angels' gene seed miraculously stabilized many of the mutant recruits, and the Legion was replenished even as Neptune's threat was neutralized. Thus, Neptune's moons became compliant, albeit at heavy cost and in somewhat tragic fashion. During the heresy, Neptune's far-flung stations were mostly bypassed or neutralized early by Horus's forces. At least one sabotage incident is noted. As Horus's vanguard slipped into the system, cult agents on Laomedia, a minor moon, infiltrated its habitats and released toxic gas, killing the colonists to eliminate Neptune's listening posts. A cruel but effective tactic. The rest of Neptune's outposts either went silent or hunkered down. In the current era, Neptune is lightly populated. A few mining operations persist on moons like Triton, where deep under the ice, Mechanicus teams extract a rare isotope called corvinium used in advanced plasma reactors. Small orbital platforms around Neptune serve as way stations for long-range patrols and as early warning pickets. It is these lonely watch stations that often find themselves dealing with threats first. Chaos cults and gene-stealer infiltrations have repeatedly sprung up on Neptune's isolated facilities, taking advantage of the distance from Terra. One infamous case occurred not long ago on Triton, where a gene-stealer cult managed to almost overrun a mining colony. The response was swift and overwhelming. The Adeptus Custodes dispatched a squadron of the dread host to Neptune, and they purged the Xenos' infestation in a single brutal night of blood and fire. It was a rare outing so far from Terra for the Emperor's guardians, underlining how seriously the Imperium treats any corruption, even at the system's edge. If you stand on an observation deck of a Neptune orbital, bundled in a heat suit because everything's cold out there, you'd see a beautiful but harsh vista. The sun is just a particularly bright star in a sky of black. Neptune below is a gorgeous blue marble, banded with high-speed winds. It looks peaceful, but you know each distant pinprick of a moon around it holds possibly a dozen souls on constant alert. There's a saying among Navy folk posted to Neptune. At the edge of night, we are the watchers on the wall. They are acutely aware of their solitude. The morale on Neptune postings can be shaky. Officers rotate back in system frequently to prevent despair or madness from setting in. But many take pride in it, too. They are literally guarding the doorstep of humanity's house. Pluto and Beyond, the final watchtower. Last of all comes Pluto, which may be a dwarf planet by classification, but in strategic terms it's enormous. Pluto is the outermost bastion of the Sol system, the tiny gatekeeper at the threshold of interstellar space. In Warhammer 40K, no one jokes about Pluto's status. Its value is carved in the epitaphs of heroes. During the Great Crusade and Heresy, Pluto's role was clear: serve as an early warning station and tripwire defense. It hosted Vox relays, long-range Auspex scanners, and void platforms meant to detect any hostile incursion and broadcast the alarm to Terra. When Horus came, Pluto did exactly that, though at great cost. In the opening moves of Horus's invasion, the Battle of Pluto, the traitor fleet used a secret advantage: the Chthonic Gate, another warp route like Uranus's that allowed them to translate directly near Pluto. The onslaught was sudden and overwhelming. First, elements of the Alpha Legion, Horus's most elusive allies, launched a covert strike on Pluto's outposts. Amid that chaos, a colossal fleet led by Horus's own Sons of Horus Legion translated in and attacked head-on. It was at Pluto that a legendary duel took place. Rogel Dorn, Primarch of the Imperial Fists and overall commander of solar defenses, personally confronted Alpharius, Primarch of the Alpha Legion, who had slipped into the system with his forces. In the ferocious battle that ensued on Pluto's very soil, Dorn is said to have slain Alpharius in single combat. Alpharius had led a contingent to sabotage Pluto's defenses from within, and Dorn met him blade to blade, ending the threat, at least for that moment. Of course, with the Alpha Legion, it's never so simple. Whether Dorn truly killed Alpharius or a double remains one of the great mysteries. But for the purposes of morale and history, Alpharius's death at Pluto is recorded as fact. Yet, that was only the prelude. The main traitor armada was bearing down. Pluto's defenders, primarily Imperial Fists Navy elements under First Captain Sigismund, fought valiantly to slow the enemy. Pluto boasted several armed moon bases. The most significant was Kerberos, essentially a fortress moon covered in gun batteries. Horus's vanguard swarmed Kerberos with elite troops and, after bloody fighting, managed to capture it intact. Suddenly, the Imperium's own fortress was turned against them. The traitors commandeered Kerberos's batteries and began blasting Pluto's remaining defenses and ships from behind. Realizing Pluto was lost, Sigismund made a fateful decision. He ordered an immediate full retreat of all surviving Imperial vessels toward Terra. It was a bitter choice, yielding the outer system, but it was part of a larger gambit. As the loyalist ships pulled back and the traitor fleet pushed forward, Sigismund's tech priests remotely overloaded Kerberos's plasma reactors. With a horrific roar, the entire moon exploded from within, obliterating itself and a sizable portion of Horus's gathered fleet around it. One of Horus's newly arrived Gloriana-class battleships was vaporized in the blast, along with dozens of escorts. The rest of the traitor armada was thrown into disarray, momentarily stunned by the unexpected cataclysm in their midst. Seizing that moment, Sigismund reversed his retreat and launched a fierce counterattack with whatever forces he had left. The Imperial fists and Navy ships struck the confused enemy, inflicting further losses and buying a precious few days of delay. It was a valiant but doomed effort to hold Pluto. Soon enough, overwhelming traitor reinforcements arrived, the sons of Horus' flagship Vengeful Spirit among them, and Sigismund had no choice but to disengage and fall back toward Terra for the final defense. But the damage was done. Horus's timetable was thrown off, and he'd lost irreplaceable ships and time. Pluto fell silent, wreathed in the debris of Kerberos and countless shattered vessels. The traitors left a token garrison and sped on toward the war's climax at Terra. After Horus's defeat, the Imperium retook Pluto with relative ease, as most traitor units there had abandoned it to join the fight at Terra or flee afterward. What they found was a scene of devastation. Kerberos was gone entirely, now just an expanding ring of rubble around Pluto. Pluto's other moons, Charon, Styx, Nix, Hydra, had been battered by bombardment or boarded and left wrecked. The once state-of-the-art listening posts were slag and ash. In the 10 millennia since, Pluto has been rebuilt into a fortress even more impregnable than before. If in the heresy it was a picket line, now it's a solid wall, albeit a small one. There are multiple overlapping layers of defenses. Charon, Pluto's largest moon, houses long-range auspex and missile silos. Hydra holds an important astropathic relay, allowing instantaneous psychic communication to Terra, so no more reliance on chain vox that could be cut. Kerberos remains destroyed. Its debris field is actually kept, patrolled as a shell of mines and scanners. Some say the Imperium deliberately maintains the Kerberos cloud as a makeshift additional barrier. Any ship trying to hide among that rubble will soon find themselves mistaken for one more drifting hulk and targeted accordingly. New automated weapons platforms float in Pluto's orbit, each a small unmanned fortress. And patrolling all around are elements of Battlefleet Solar, typically a squadron of destroyers or a light cruiser at any given time, keeping watch. To approach Pluto now, one would first encounter stern challenges from these patrol ships. Then, as one drew closer, a blip on their scanner might reveal itself to be a star fort or a monitor station locking weapons on them. Every channel would carry the same message. Turn back, authorized vessels only. Trespassers will be destroyed. It's not subtle, but it is effective. Pluto truly feels like the threshold between the Emperor's domain and the void beyond. On one side, facing inward, a constant stream of sensor data and signals flows toward Terra, updating the inner system of any development. On the other side, facing outward, is the silent abyss of the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud, where anything or nothing might lurk. The personnel on Pluto know this feeling well. They stand at the edge of known space, peering into the dark, so the billions behind them can sleep a bit more soundly. What lies beyond Pluto? Officially, the Sol system extends to the Kuiper Belt and the Oort cloud of comets. The Imperium, of course, lays claim to all of it, though in practice these regions are too vast to patrol thoroughly. A few dwarf planets out there, like Mechanicus and Eris, had been charted and occasionally host automated outposts, a beacon here, a munitions cache hidden there. But largely, the outer reaches are a buffer wilderness. One distant object of note in the history books is Sedna, a far-flung planetoid on a wildly elliptical orbit. During the early Great Crusade, Sedna proved to harbor something terrifying, an unseen Xenos threat that had lingered from old night. Records are scant, purposefully, but it took the deployment of several Space Marine legions and some terrible weapon, possibly even a cyclonic warhead or an unleashed psychic choir, to purge Sedna of this foe. After that hard-fought victory, humanity finally held every corner of Sol in undisputed control. Sedna itself was left a lifeless, possibly shattered husk, drifting in the darkness. It's largely forgotten now, a footnote that modern Imperial citizens wouldn't even know. But it was, in effect, the last battle securing the solar system until the Horus heresy reignited war on the doorstep of Terra. Now, far beyond Sedna stretches the Oort cloud, a spherical shell of trillions of cometary bodies enveloping the system. It's like a wall of cosmic debris separating Sol from the galaxy. The Imperium can't police the Oort cloud in any meaningful way. It's simply too huge. But they don't need to. Any threat coming through it would trigger Pluto's sensors long before it traversed those light months of distance. The Oort cloud is essentially a no-man's land where the occasional Imperial probe might venture and ancient icy rocks silently orbit as they have since the system's birth. It's eerie to think that some of those far-flung ice balls might still carry lingering traces of pre-Imperial human activity, an old science probe, a Dark Age automated outpost long dormant, or even Xenos snoopers. But if they do, they keep quiet. If the Imperium detects anything moving out there that shouldn't, well, that's what those picket destroyers at Pluto are for. In the midst of this cold outer darkness, there is one beacon of hope and symbolism, the Shrine Comet. Roughly every 1,000 years, a particular comet with an eccentric orbit swings into the inner solar system. Long ago, it had an ordinary scientific designation, but that was lost in time. During the age of the Unification Wars, the Emperor himself noticed this comet, and seeing it as a potent symbol, decreed it would be made a shrine. When it next passed by Terra, the Emperor's followers landed on it and erected the Shrine of Unity, a monument celebrating Terra's reunification under the Emperor. Over time, this comet became a legendary omen of good fortune. Its appearances roughly every millennium are accompanied by system-wide celebrations. However, it too had a brush with the heresy. The Word-Bearers Legion, in the time before they turned traitor, once secretly built a hidden temple on the Shrine Comet to worship the Emperor as a god, going against the Imperial truth. When this was discovered, around the time of the Monarchia incident, Lorgar was ordered to remove the blasphemy. He did so, though grudgingly, and not before the Legion had prostrated themselves in fervent prayer there. In a way, the Shrine Comet holds the dubious honor of being the site of one of the first instances of Imperial cult worship of the Emperor, something that would later become universal. Today, the comet still carries the edifices of the Shrine of Unity, a golden Aquila statue, prayer etchings in its surface, etc., and when it appears in the sky, billions on Terra and elsewhere kneel and give thanks for the Emperor's continued protection. Then it vanishes back to the edge of the system for another 1,000 years, like a ghost of glory past. So, at the furthest boundary of Sol, we have this mix of the eerie and the exalted, Pluto and its vigilant guns, Sedna's forgotten battleground, the silent Oort cloud, and the shrine comet carrying human faith through the dark. It's a fitting end cap to our journey. Conclusion. The Sol system in Warhammer 40,000 is at once a living museum of human history, a ceaseless engine of Imperial power, and a layered fortress of unimaginable scale. The planets we know have become almost mythical in their transformations. Earth is holy Terra, a globe-spanning temple and seat of godlike power. Mars is a great foundry of war, the iron heart of the Mechanicus. Luna, once lifeless rock, is now a bastion and gene cradle. The gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn host entire fleets, armories, and secret orders on their moons. Even tiny Pluto stands as a stalwart sentry at the system's edge. The solar system is no mere collection of worlds. It's an integrated bastion, a mechanism with every part devoted to the survival of the Imperium. In this grim future, our solar system is far from a quiet backwater. It's the most prized target in the galaxy. Thus, it has been turned into the most heavily defended. It bears the scars of ancient wars on every world, yet it remains defiantly functional. In Terra's teeming hive cities, in Mars' roaring forges, on Titan's solemn gray plains, and in Pluto's lonely watch stations, countless billions of humans toil, fight, and pray so that the heart of humanity continues to beat. From the blinding light of Sol at the center to the cold darkness at the fringes, the Sol system endures as a symbol of all that the Imperium of man fights for. It's humanity's first and holiest realm, the one no emperor, war master, Xenos, or god could ever truly conquer. In the end, there's really no place like home, even if that home has become a polluted, battle-scarred Gothic shadow of its former self. It is ours, the cradle and throne of our species, and the Imperium will defend it down to the last guardsman, the last servitor, the last drop of blood.